Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Greater Washington Urban League's On Track radio broadcast. I'm your host, Roland Turner, and this morning we are continuing our series on COVID-19. And I have, once again, as a wonderful guest host in the studio this morning, our very own Xavier Snow, and he is the project coordinator of the Greater Washington Urban League's COVID-19 Contact Tracing Awareness Program. And Xavier, once again, is here to talk all about COVID-19 and the Black community. Once again, I'm Roland Turner, your host, and I'll turn it over to you, Xavier.
Thank you, Roland. This is Xavier Snow, as mentioned. I am the project coordinator for the Greater Washington Urban League's Contact Tracing Program. In our first program, we sat down with Pastor A.C. Durant of the 10th Street Baptist Church, who shared some very profound gems with us as it relates to COVID-19, contact tracing, and the impact of the pandemic on our spiritual health. Our second program featured guest Dr. Lisa Fitzpatrick of Grapevine Health and Greater Washington Urban League's own Mr. George H. Lambert. Dr. Fitzpatrick discussed some of the underlying truths behind the misconceptions that were rampant at the start of this pandemic. Mr. Lambert shared information on the League's COVID-19 Contact Tracing Awareness Program and how it relates to the other pandemics of systemic racism. Today, we will continue our series with two very special guests. Nancy Joseph, certified life coach and vice president of the Greater Washington Urban League's Thursday Network, and Tyrone Lofton, health outreach specialist of Grapevine Health. What a pleasure it is to sit down with two young professionals that are setting positive examples in our community. Our first guest, Nancy Joseph, who, as I previously mentioned, is the vice president of the Greater Washington Urban League's Thursday Network. Nancy, can you please tell us a little bit more about the Thursday Network, as well as what your role is as the vice president?
Absolutely. First and foremost, Xavier, I just wanted to say thank you for having me. Definitely a pleasure to be here and support Greater Washington Urban League, our affiliate, anytime we have the opportunity to do so. Again, my name is Nancy Joseph. I am the vice president of the Thursday Network, Young Professionals of Greater Washington Urban League. And primarily our mission is to provide a place for young professionals to support Greater Washington Urban League initiatives and focus most of our energies on community service and civic engagement, as well as economic empowerment and personal development for specific young professionals in the area. But with that, our main pillars are centered around community engagement, political advocacy, social detriments of health, economic security, as well as youth empowerment.
And as a vice president, what are you tasked to do with the Thursday Network?
So primarily as a vice president, I do have a board of about 14 board members that I am responsible for in terms of leading the fort and the mission as it relates to our community service initiatives in the community. We have a very robust team that works day in and day out, even in these uncertain times, to support not only the community, but the overarching initiatives and goals of the Greater Washington Urban League, as well as the National Urban League.
Wonderful. Now, with so many twists and turns, it seems like 2020 is turning out to be something out of a Steven Spielberg horror flick. Literally, so much has happened over the past few months. I cannot even begin to describe the magnitude of COVID-19. From an overall wellness standpoint, I know you're a life coach, but how are you holding up through all of this?
I mean, it's interesting. We've had, I want to call it like a triple pandemic, right? We've had the financial instability, we've had the racial instability, as well as the pandemic from a health perspective. Coping-wise, I think I just had to adjust. In the beginning, it was difficult, specifically with the George Floyd situation that happened. I had to just find a way to kind of pivot and navigate and just kind of center my focus on something positive. The good thing about the Greater Washington Urban League Thursday Network is it provided that very thing for me to do. One thing that we were great at doing was when the COVID-19 hit, we were able to transition seamlessly into our programming and still be in a space to serve the community as we always do. Personally, again, it's a lot to balance, but when we look at the need out there in terms of what we need to do and what we're charged to do, it kind of dissipates, and it balances you out and puts you in a better position to kind of stand strong for not only the missions that we support, but just as a community. So I was just able to kind of pivot and move, and just so thankful for the Urban League and Thursday Network as a community, and I also say family, because I look at it as family, to be in a position to kind of navigate these uncertain and difficult times.
But it's good to know that you're able to navigate through this very, very hard times that we're going through. Now, when we met a few weeks back at the League's Back to School event, I spoke briefly with the Thursday Network's president, Gennaro Stewart. He mentioned that so many of the Thursday Network's members have moved back to their hometowns in different states. Do you have any comments on this observation? And what are some of the other trends that you have noticed among your peers that have come to as a result of the pandemic?
As far as going home, it's just a natural affinity to want to be around your family during times like this. And I know when it first hit, we were still trying to figure out what was going on. And I know everything looks a lot differently, specifically now for Thanksgiving. Folks are electing to stay here. But the trends that I've been seeing is people have definitely, or in our age group, have been focusing on a lot of self-care and just trying to balance their thoughts and feelings and what they absorb as it relates to everything that's going on, as it relates to the election, COVID-19. We've been, specifically as an organization, we have been focusing on making sure that our members understand that they have to put themselves first and not kind of position themselves to absorb all the negativity on from a day-to-day basis. But folks have been going home, but also too, but they've been doing it safely and joining us virtually as they do it, so that they can still be in tune with what's going on and not kind of like still feel like they're on their own and still have an outlet to support and do different things in the community. So those are the main trends that we've been focusing on.
Awesome. Now, one of the big things in the news that seems to be the most obvious, as well the most significant, is the number of cases that we are getting each day. In fact, this morning, 1,707 deaths were reported. This is the highest number in months. What advice would you give those who still may not be taking the proper protocols, or maybe to just have it in their head that the virus isn't even real?
I think I'll look at this holistically from two perspectives. One, first and foremost, we have to be safe. And we also have to, what I would say too, is we have to make sure that we understand that's not just about us. I think sometimes we can get into this mindset and think that think that I'm good if I go somewhere else, but not really necessarily think how much it'll impact the folks that are around you. And I think we need to get into a position where we inadvertently kind of assess the time, right? And see and look and really internally look what the bigger message is. I think in times of adversity and distress, we tend to kind of gear towards what's negative versus looking for what can be positive out of a negative and destructive situation, right? And the message I would say, and I could personally attest to this, that I've used this opportunity to see how I can be better personally in my own life, use some time to self-reflect, kind of take an inventory and assessment of my life to see areas that I can focus on. If it's something where I need to read more books or read specific how-to books to put me in a position to be more professionally aligned with the goals or the change I wish to see within my life, I would then, advise folks to focus on different things that they've been waiting all this time to have. You'll never, although moments can be unfortunate, but when was the last time, you had all this time to be home, and just kind of pivot and move and write down a list of all the things you wanted to do, whether it's reading, whether it's working on that business, whether it's learning. I know the stock market is big right now, taking moments to learn about the stock market so there's so many different things from the positive. I know everything that we've been kind of centered and geared and focused on has been COVID-19, negative, death, this election. All these things have kind of pushed us to kind of a negative atmosphere. And I personally, I'm just saying from personal experience, I would just advise folks to take an inventory of all the things that they've wanted to do and shift the focus to kind of being in a better position to become better out of COVID-19 and not really make it your particular situation. Become better.
Absolutely. That's great advice. That's very good advice. Now, we spoke in our previous broadcast that
Mm-hmm.
about the undeniable deadly impact on the Black community that the COVID-19 has had. We have also come to learn that family gatherings have been deemed a high cause for COVID-19 related cases. As a people, we are naturally affectionate and expressive, especially towards our loved ones. As we approach the holiday season, what would you tell our community, especially as it regards gathering in mass with family and other social celebrations?
So I know that at the beginning of the pandemic, it was said to, keep your gathering small, 6 to 10, and, keep it rather. Now we're kind of inverted, and now they're saying that those are the very actions that are causing us to influx in these cases. What I would just advise is for us to really take a moment to think about, again, I'm going to go back to the safety mindset. Think about how you want your family to be safe during this time. This is just one temporary thing that we're going through. I think in the back of our mind, we have to know that we're going to get through it. I think most of the time we're just so stuck in a temporary moment of going through it. We have to think about, if you don't take these necessary safety precautions, you might not have that family member next to you next year. So I would just advise folks to really think about the bigger picture. I know that we are fatigued, we're COVID fatigued, we're virtual fatigued, but in these moments, we have to think about the bigger pictures relating to just the overall safety of our friends, families, colleagues, friends, for the long haul. So just get creative. Find ways to connect with folks. Find different fun things to do via virtual. I know some people could be Zoom fatigued. There are other platforms that could make it feel a little different. You can, Google Hangout. There's different platforms that you can kind of indulge yourself in that could make it fun. Look for games. Pick up the phone, call each other. We don't call each other enough. We're always texting. We're always emailing. Sometimes a voice is good, and also uptick the frequency. Call people a little bit more often. I think we're so used to being away, and we call maybe once a week. We call that family member once a week. Hey, check on them every day. That also can support somebody's personal morale, and as it relates to specifically mental health, that's been a big thing. People being in seclusion. I think that's another thing we need to look at and just make sure that we focus not only on just the physical aspects of catching COVID-19, but also think about the emotional diseases, which is mental health, and there's been talks of kids suffering from that.
Absolutely.
So focusing on the kids too as well, not just us as professionals and our parents, but also just looking at each other holistically to see how we can support each other from a mental health perspective. And just connect. Just try to keep that human connection going, because ultimately what I believe, that is what's going to really get us over the hump with this COVID-19, outside of the vaccines and just curing it, but just get through it. We need to be able to get through it in a safe, in a realistic way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I just kind of want to wrap up based off of, what you just said in regards to the mental health and everyone just overall just taking precautions to take care of themselves and their family members. What final words would you want to leave with our audience to just make sure that they are doing what they need to do to protect themselves and their neighbors?
Again, I'm just going to reiterate again, is just, wash your hands, wear your mask. I know the mask is a big thing for some folks. Another thing I would say is don't get too comfortable. When you hang out with folks, you might say, hey, that's my homie, and trust them. Yeah, we trust everybody. But one thing we can't do is we can't trust this disease. And this disease sees no color, sees no sex, gender. It sees nothing. It's coming for everyone. And so I would just advise folks to just do take the basic precautions to protect themselves and protect each other, and don't get too comfortable. It's easy to get comfortable, get lax, and be in certain scenarios with people that and think that because you're comfortable with that person, that they may have not connected with somebody else that might have had COVID-19. We don't know where everybody is, so I think that's the biggest thing we need to keep in mind as we navigate the holidays and just elect to put ourselves in a positions to be around other folks. Just take care of yourself, be safe, and be well.
Well said from the life coach herself. Well, Miss Nancy, where can people contact you, the Thursday Network? Where can they go and find more information if they want to connect?
Absolutely. You can find Thursday Network on all social media platforms, which is Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can reach me at vicepresident@thursdaynetwork.org. And you also can visit thursdaynetwork.org to keep abreast of any upcoming events, activities, or community service initiatives that you'd like to be a part of. We have a lot going on. We have a very dynamic, robust, an ambitious board that is working around the clock all the time, even through these difficult times, to make sure that we have a place to support our young professionals in the area as well as the community. So if you feel like you want to get involved, even where you sit at your very seat, we are here in open arms to kind of take you and support you, usher you into where you need to be.
Well, thank you so much. And that's thursdaynetwork.org, right?
That is correct.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for your time, and I want you to have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our next guest is someone I got the chance to know after spending 8 hours on a road trip to New Jersey and Philadelphia. But before then, just from the few times we've talked, I could tell right away I was talking to someone who was very passionate about not only what they did, but also how far they've come. Can you please introduce yourself, what it is that you do, and why you do it?
My name's Tyrone. I work for Grapevine Health. I do outreach for them, and I do it because I feel as though people should understand their health because it's like very important. And my story, I'm from DC, from Southeast, raised by a deaf mother. I'm a non-traditional first-generation college graduate. My bachelor's is in molecular biology, biochemistry, and bioinformatics with a concentration in biochemistry. I know that was a mouthful. But through the process, I had people reach out to me about how's school going, and it happened that a mutual friend of the founder, Dr. Lisa Fitzpatrick, reached out to me and asked me, are you interested in doing health literacy outreach? And I said yes, and in April, I've been working with Dr. Lisa and Grapevine ever since.
As I mentioned, we shared a car ride for about 8 hours to do some COVID-19 community outreach in Philly and Newark, New Jersey. It appears that the common theme is that when people were asked to name some of the basic functions of the body and how things work on the inside, we seem to be lost about 80% or more of the time. Talk about why community outreach as it pertains to public health is so vital to our community, especially in these uncertain times.
Community outreach is very vital, especially when it comes to like health, is because, like you said, like a lot of people didn't understand or know like what parts of the body were located where. Where they were located, as well as, for example, like somebody might say, I have a pain, in my abdomen, I think it's my kidneys, but like your kidneys are towards your back. So if you have a pain, it should be in your back. So how can they truly treat themselves if they don't understand like the body? So I go of outreach is like, going to different places, starting in DC all the way to Philadelphia, New Jersey, and just asking them, hey, what the body do? That was the segment that we did for Health Literacy Month in October. And just to find out if they know where the different parts of the bodies were located, the different organs. And as well as like if they didn't know, we informed them like where the organ was located and what the organ did. So that was one part of our outreach. The other part of our outreach is going around and asking people what they think about vaccines, especially with COVID-19 going on right now. So we just, wanted to make sure like everybody could get on board with understanding like what everybody else is thinking about it. And to give the community a voice, like, because sometimes they go unheard. So we just literally out on the street and let them say what they think, and we record it and put it on social media like YouTube. So the world, the neighborhood can all see their thoughts. And somewhere along that line, we can come to an agreement of what needs to be done, especially when it comes to health in the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. And for those listening, you guys can check out Dr. Lisa on the street on YouTube. What they're doing is amazing. Really just educating our people. But as I prepared for this interview, I came across a recent CBS article published September 20th, and it was about COVID-19 and how it is killing young adults and children at disproportionately high rates. A doctor interviewed went on to say that one of the unfortunate things about this is that children are mostly asymptomatic. Can you explain what this is and how it has affected our understanding of the virus?
So when we speak about the word asymptomatic, that means that a person's not showing the symptoms. They can have the virus, but they don't show no fever, no cough, nothing. If you're talking to them, you'll think, they're in good health. But the whole time they do have the virus. So that's one of the biggest concerns with doctors and scientists, because like if you don't know if that person have the virus, that virus could still transfer to another person. The next person, they might not be asymptomatic, but they have the symptoms and maybe they get hospitalized or they actually feel like, sick from the virus. So that's like the scary thing. And then at the same time as well as the virus normally lasts 2 weeks. That's why they say quarantining for like 2 weeks. So you could have had it and then like 2 weeks had passed and you didn't know that you had the virus. So you're just out and about, not socially distancing. So that's why it's important to social distance yourself when you're out, wear a mask, because together we can prevent the spread of this virus. And actually, just today, I had somebody text me close to me that said they tested positive for COVID. So COVID is a real thing. So as far as I wasn't around them, but somebody I know. And so just to show you that this is not like a joke, they said that they did have some symptoms, but they felt out it wasn't necessarily severe. So, of course, my response to them was just make sure you quarantine for 2 weeks and let the virus run its course. But a lot of people don't think it's real, but it is.
Absolutely.
And as far as the children, I know they say it's like a certain age level where they say it doesn't affect the kids that much, but the point that it can, and it's a possibility. So if you have kids and you're not also keeping them safe spaces with social distancing as well, maybe they may have and not have symptoms, again, be asymptomatic, and then be around other kids and then pass to the parents, and then you have the whole spread all over again.
Now, another term we are beginning to hear more often as we approach the winter and flu season is the second wave. What does this term mean, and why is it so significant, especially right now?
It's so significant right now at this point because we are in the second wave. When they spoke about that, they were saying we in this peak right now and it's going to go down, but it's going to come back. So a lot of times around the cold months, people tend, naturally to get sick, like just a regular cold or regular flu maybe. But that's just how the immune system works. So it's coming back at high levels. As you see, there's a lot of potentially shutdowns maybe happening soon. A lot of states that are restricting restaurants from having a certain capacity of people. So that's what they mean by that second wave, that it's going to come back to a high level to where we might have to go back down into a shutdown to try to stop the spread as much as possible, because at the end of the day we saw what happened. We saw the numbers of the deaths of people that suffered from COVID-19. I actually had a cousin as well that passed, unfortunately, for COVID-19 in the April months. So again, that's just this is a real virus.
Yeah, man. Sorry to hear that. This is no joke, man.
Appreciate that.
Now, as you know, this program is directed to inform the community about the importance of contact tracing and to build awareness about stopping the spread. One of our mutual contacts, Dr. Lisa Fitzpatrick, whom we recently interviewed on an earlier show, shared that she was one of the persons participating in the vaccine trials. I personally find it inspiring that someone believes in science that much and is willing to be one of the first tested. Do you know what we have learned so far about these trials, and when should people assume that the vaccines are safe to take?
As far as the trials and what Dr. Lisa has experienced, before you even talk about experience, the reason why she did it is because a lot of Black people in our communities, scared of vaccines. Vaccines does have a history, the Tuskegee experiment I always hear and stuff like that, and they try to remind people yes, that did happen, but now let's move forward. Because the issue is for them to make an effective vaccine, they have to have all the population involved to create that vaccine, because they only have half of the population. They can't say it can be dispersed amongst the whole population, because they want to make sure it's safe for everybody.
Right.
So in the process of her doing it, she recorded herself on social media like Facebook, and explain to people how she felt through the experiences, as well as show the documentation of what they were asking you, and let you know, one, it's voluntary. They didn't force her to do it. She chose to do it. And just to show that It's science. Don't get it confused with like the politics. A lot of times people right now is like, oh, they saying the vaccine going to come out and you can take it here and there. I don't want to take it because like they say it's going to be here at this time before the election. So he's just rushing it. And like, don't like listen to politicians, listen to the scientists, listen to the doctors, because they're the one that actually care about resolving, this issue that we're facing and dealing with every day until we can find the actual solution for COVID-19.
I think that's a good point. Just to listen to the politicians. I'm not to listen to just the politicians, but actually the people who are doing the research and the science. I think that's really important because people have somewhat of a mistrust within our government spaces and the politics, especially right now.
And I would add to that, like, so they can understand the process, especially with me being like a science major and stuff, we learned this in school, like there's trials that these vaccines go through. So like one of the beginning trials, it's like they make sure it's safe for humans completely before they would inject it into a human. And then once they can like make sure it's safe before they inject it into the human and make sure it's doing what they want to do regarding like protecting that human from the virus, then from there they'll like have that first trial with maybe like 3 people or so that will volunteer and like they'll monitor them and then see make sure it's safe. Then once they like do it like repetitively a couple of times, then you go to the next trial where they'll add more people to do it. So eventually, once they say that like it is ready to be given to like the population, that at that point that it's extremely like safe as it possibly can be, and as well as like they understand like the concern that people are having, they make sure to double check that okay, it's not going to have no extreme side effects. Right. There might be minor side effects, just like when you have the flu shot, like oh I got the flu shot and I feel a little sick, but then after like you're fine. I think people forget that like people die from the flu. So it's like, would you rather have a flu shot and then, feel a little bit sick? Or would you rather risk, being in the hospital because of the flu? So people have to keep that in mind.
That's great insight. Now, I just want to thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge and you just sharing this information with our community. Before we close this program out, do you have any closing remarks that you would like to share with our audience today?
As far as like closing remarks, I would say, take this seriously, social distance, wear your mask. And at the end of the day, we saw like the results of people that lost their loved ones. So I'll also say like at this moment in time, if you can, call like your loved ones just to say hi, to check on them, to see how they're doing, especially like mentally, because this is a different time for all of us. So just be, aware of that, like you're not the only person that's facing this and going through this. So yeah. As well as that, Grapevine Health, you can find us on all of your social media platforms. So Facebook, just put in Grapevine Health, the same thing for Instagram as well as LinkedIn as well. So yeah. And then as well as have a number, which is 202-702-8175. You can also call that number, leave a voicemail, or leave a text, because it's a Google number, and somebody will get back in contact with you if you have any health-related questions. And as well as, like, even if you need a doctor or you want to understand your insurance, we can help you with that as well.
Well, Mr. Tyrone Lofton, I greatly appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with our listeners today. I salute you for the important work that you're doing for our community. I also want to thank Roland Turner, our regular host, for allowing me to occupy this space as guest host for these broadcasts. We have brought to you for our COVID contact tracing awareness program. We have sought to underscore the importance of stopping the spread of the virus known as COVID-19. We hope that you have learned a little bit more about this deadly pandemic and the importance of efforts to stop its spread through contact tracing. This is Xavier Snow reminding you to protect yourself and your neighbor. Take contact tracing seriously and remember to respond if you receive a call from a healthcare professional informing you that you have been in contact with someone who has tested positive for the virus. Get tested, quarantine, and stop the spread. Be safe.
On behalf of the entire Greater Washington Urban League staff, our president and CEO, George H. Lambert Jr., and yours truly, your executive producer and host, Roland Marie Turner, we thank you for listening to On Track on WPGC Radio. On Track is a community service of WPGC Radio and the Greater Washington Urban League. Look us up at www.gwul.org. Once again, I'm Roland Turner, and please have a productive day.